find it valuable to have when I have conversations with other advisors and people just kind of share ideas and that can stimulate some further conversation. So thanks for reaching out. So tell me, what's on your mind today? What would you like to talk about?
I appreciate the layup, and I completely agree with you. I'm a copious note taker, so sometimes I'm scrambling and can't quite catch it all. So it's good to have uh, that safety net there with the recording.
Cool.
So really the curiosity is what I'm trying to do is increase awareness to all the major players within the space that might be able to help our business owner clients. So the context to that is, and I have a story which I can get into, but I'll leave it to later. I'm trying to create, or was in the midst, have now fully developed, and I'm going to market with some material and landing page and things like that, but a core structure to deliver a service offering to business owners, which exceeds the simple money management aspect of it, the financial plan, the investment portfolio, that kind of thing. I think that's the traditional realm that people in my position play in, and they really don't broaden their perspective wide enough, in my view. So as an attempt to, well, obviously increase market share, but strengthen the service provided to business owners. I went through a course. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's in the States. Some members are appearing within Canada, but it's from the Exit Planning Institute. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. CEPA, is it a CEPA designation?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the CEPA designation really just instructs professionals in your capacity and mine in various different arms on a universal methodology for taking a business owner from, the day-to-day through to understanding the value of the company, certain weak points, and accelerating that growth to the point where when they start to feel the time is right, exiting the business, right? Because as are well aware, the amount of times a business owner gets to the point where they just feel absolutely fed up and decide to sell the business and think it's just a matter of getting a lawyer and an accountant together and signing some forms, that eye-opening moment where they realize it's not as valuable as they thought it was.
Correct.
Now that changes their whole third stage, right? So we want to get ahead of that problem and educate the owner about what they need to do to make sure their asset is transferable.
Right.
And so in bringing the resources in like yourself, obviously there are areas of execution that we can't handle. So my interest was about broadening the scope of those professionals who can be brought into the fold when necessary.
Yeah, it's really good summary. I actually looked into the CEPA program when I was evaluating um, my kind of route to educate myself in this practice. I've been in business for more than 30 years. I've worked in the corporate world for first 10 years in advertising, and then I started my own business, a bakery business here in Vancouver, which is still operating after 28 years, I guess. And I don't own it anymore, but I exited from that business. Then I've been doing business advisory since then. And the focus of the advisory that we were doing was around structure and systemization. And so businesses could scale, safely and properly. But we didn't really delve very much into what's the game plan here, like where is this all going to end up for the owner. And that's when I started to kind of evaluate what I could bring to owners who were now nearing that age where they're starting to think about their exit and leaving their business. Many of them don't like the word exit to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Transition, succession, whatever you want to call it, transfer, that they really didn't understand, nor did I understand that there is actually a process to go about this in a tried and true way. And the reason I chose to go with BEI was the course was much more in depth. I thought it was a longer period of time. It literally took me 14 months from the beginning till finally finishing my certification. I mean, I wasn't doing it all the time, but certainly it was a significant amount of time. And what I learned from that process was that my role as an advisor, it became really clear. I really became focused on what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish with my business owner clients, and what role I played. And the other part of it that really appealed to me was the collaborative nature of this process, and so that it's not a one-man person. Somebody needs to kind of stick handle and quarterback whatever the process, but and it shouldn't be the owner for sure. But there are other advisors involved, and we all work collaboratively to achieve the goals that are set at the beginning. So it was really a nice kind of clear message and a clear path that allowed me to help owners not just transition out of the business, but even think beyond that. What is their life going to look like? I mean, a lot of owners, I think, probably are even worried about exiting just because they have no idea how they're going to spend the rest of their life. Try and get a business owner on a beach lying around for a week. It's not going to happen, right? So they're just not those kind of people. But what is it that I mean, I don't have a specific. I guess I would act as a business coach in the table, but generally when you're looking at you come from financial planning background, is that right?
Wealth management, financial planning is a component and a service that we provide, yes, but our revenue is generated from portfolio management.
Yeah, and what really appealed to me about that was that, we tend to think as business owners tend to think, okay, well, there's the business and then there's my personal life, and it's like, okay, so I've got my RSP, I'm doing over this thing here, but we never tend to think of our business as actually an investment. And so this is what was really exciting to me about the idea of you get the team together, the core people together at the beginning. So, the wealth manager is there, the evaluators there, the key people are there. They don't have necessarily a job to do yet, or they may not necessarily be handling the money at this point. But ultimately, if they're there at the beginning and thinking about what's going to happen to that money when that business does transfer, that's a real, that's a real great position to be at.
Yeah. You mentioned a very key point, bringing all of the people together at the table. So it sounds like what made you gravitate towards this line of work was the collaboration aspect, the ability it takes a village, right? Recognizing there are certain lanes that you operate in, but bringing the resources together. And you mentioned an important point, which is bringing those people together and in front of the business owner before any of them may even get their chance to provide their service or might be required,
right?
Kind of opens the eyes of the business owner up to start to think about what to expect, right? If there are people they're being introduced to and it doesn't resonate with them as to why they're being introduced to their, their exit planner or their, whomever, it starts to fall in place a little bit far earlier, and then they can be prepared for that journey along the way, right?
Yeah, I think that one of the that's right, and one of the fears, I mean, of business owners is they don't necessarily understand the path. They don't know what the process is. They don't necessarily know where to start or who to ask or what steps to take, and so it can be seem kind of overwhelming, I think, for a lot of them to think about this. It might just seem like you said at the beginning, well, get my accountant, you can figure out what the business is worth and find a broker and put a sign on the door or something, in business for sale. But, there are so many factors that just are even non-monetary
Yeah.
that come into the goal setting part, right? Which is in our, I don't know what CEPA, what their approach is, but we had 3 types of goals in exit planning. The first is what's called like a universal goal, to be financially independent
Hmm.
from the business, right? Secondly, to have some foundational goals, which means like, what's the date? Let's get a date, not like 5 years from now, but like January 2025, whatever that date might be. What is the money you're going to need to get out of this business feeling secure, and thirdly, who ideally would you like to see carry forward with the business? Because that's often a really area where until they get someone coming to look at and buying the business from them, and they find out the guy is, some company is going to basically wants to acquire them and put everybody out of work, fire their
Mm-hmm.
employees or things like that. It starts to kind of think, wait a minute, that's not really that's really not what I wanted. And so then you start to talk about value goals, like
Mm-hmm.
really those value goals, like what is really important to you. And I read a statistic, I don't know how true it is, but there's a statistic that BEI did a survey with business owners, and they do a couple of years, and they just ask them a bunch of questions. And 70% of business owners who had transferred, I don't know if you transferred their business, had regrets just 1 year later. They were thinking, oh, I wish I would have done this. And the first thing, well, they didn't get as much money as they thought. No, it wasn't necessarily that. It just didn't go the way they thought. It didn't sell to the person they wanted. It was much more complicated and frustrating, and whatever it was, it was just really a bit of and and I guess I'm just whatever. Why wouldn't it be? Because if you do something as big as that, and this is the first time you've ever done it, you have no, you're kind of just finding your way through the maze of what needs to get done. It's bound to have some bumps, right?
Absolutely. No, you nailed it. And what would I would, first off, I just want to pause for a second and acknowledge kind of the time, because we did put aside 30 minutes. I know we got a late start. I have the ability to run a little bit later, but not that much, because I do have a subsequent meeting. But what I think would be warranted is continuing this conversation, because just I can already tell that there's so much to dive into, not least of which is a bit of a, not comparison, but review of the methodologies of each of our kind of
Yes.
educational backgrounds, because the 3 things that you just highlighted take different forms or names
Yeah.
within CEPA, but it's effectively the same thing. So I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about the BI structure, maybe with the time that we have or BEI, sorry, BEI?
It is BIS.
Yes. Maybe with the time that we have available, I'd like to just understand a little bit about what your ideal client profile is, and then specifically the nuts and bolts of what you do with that client. Yeah.
So, I think there are 2 types of avatars, if you will,
Yep.
that I'm targeting, and one is, of course, mature business owners, who have a business that has a revenue on the low side of 3 million to kind of $20 million. That's kind of my sweet spot there. Businesses, and seeing that they are in that age category, that they're looking forward in the next number of years to retire, that they value getting the best advice. They know they can't do it all themselves. They value the idea of having someone who has experience and expertise coordinating and project managing this process, guiding them, if you will. Yes, I want to exit. Okay, so what do we need to do first? Okay, what do we need to do then? Who do we need to bring in? What's the process this is going to take? How much is this going to, all those kinds of question marks, be able to answer, or at least get answers to the questions that owners has in kind of one place. So that's that part of it. The second avatar that I'm trying to reach are other professionals like yourself, who have business owner clients. And I feel that if they are educated as to the value of exit planning and the importance of it, that they will feel like the right thing to do is to engage their business owner clients in that process.
Right.
And by doing so, helping their clients, take a positive step in the right direction by planning. And secondly, be there through that process and have an active role, which will create engagements for them, because the nature of the exit planning process by nature creates engagements for the advisors that are on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing. So there's those COIs, or, the circle of influence, close, trusted advisors with business clients that say, look, I've got someone who kind of can give you a holistic picture of the exit planning process. I can do my part. I'll be there through that. I'll be handling your the money part, wealth management, how we're going to do with the money, figuring out how much money you're going to need out of the business to sustain the lifestyle you want to have after you leave. I'll be there for that. And throughout that process. But what makes sense is that instead of you being in the middle, we have this picture of, the business owner, and he's got a circle of different advisors around them. Mm-hmm. And that's an owner kind of driven process, which to me, as a former business owner, realizes that I can't be focused on building value in my business at the same time I'm trying to go out the back door. It doesn't make any sense. So if I know someone's looking after the dots and crossing the T's and pulling the data together and managing the process and communication, I can feel that I can focus on those value drivers that are going to increase the transferable value of my business, so that when I do go, I'm going to be able to maximize that. And I think that's again, the team. The owner's part of the team. The owner's got a big part of the team, but not the quarterback.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I recognize your two avenues, direct sort of prospecting, if, targeting the business owner specifically, but then also recognizing those COI networks, educating them, don't need to educate me, but getting them on board with sort of the process and where you fit in. Yep. In terms of where you fit in, and I'll just lay out a general structure. Valuation, business owner, what is it that we have? Let's identify the value, do evaluation, understand the weaknesses, which do we need to prioritize? Let's get those in place and start to work on those action items in this EPI structured it as a 90-day sprints, mm-hmm. And then getting to the point where a decision might be made. So bringing in, again, business valuation, but then an M&A person, someone on the execution and transaction side.
Yeah.
Where along that arch do you fall specifically?
Well, I mean, starting at the beginning, which is really getting clarity, smart kind of goals, like really specific, measurable, or realistic, whatever, driven goals about what a successful exit is going to look like for the owner.
Okay.
And that then becomes like the game plan, right, for everybody. Yep. Okay, so here's what we're trying to get to, everybody. This is what it's going to look like. We want this thing to look like 3 years from now, or whatever that time frame. Okay, so what do we need to do, Mr. Tax Accountant? What do we need to do, Mr. Lawyer, Transactional? What do we need to do?
Right.
Wealth planner. What do we need to do in terms of insurance? What do we need to do in terms of the business drivers and the value that we need to generate? Obviously, management team in place, systemization, structure, documented, procedures, things that when someone comes to look at your business and lifts the hood, is going to say, wow, this thing is really running like a clock. You know, this is really
Okay.
a business has predictable revenue potential for the future, and even growing. They don't buy, businesses buy, people buy businesses that have a predictable track record and a predictable revenue stream, so that they can measure the value of that where it is right now, and see whether they can grow the value beyond what it is now. So
Right.
that's what I'm there to do. We do, I guess, pre-due diligence, right? So they call it
Right.
go through
Okay. Okay.
go through the checklist of everything that a buyer is going to be wanting to see and do and
Right.
check whatever, and do that in advance, so that when people, and you could get even an unexpected offer. Someone could, hey, walk in today, are you interested in selling your business?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens. And along with that, I do this business continuity instructions. I don't know if that was part of the work that you did, business continuity. Did you
No.
deal with that?
No, it
Well,
didn't actually.
yeah, I know we're running into time here. I've got another 5 minutes too, but business continuity is basically a will for the business.
Hmm.
So it means that if God forbid something happens to you, the owner or key person or whatever in the business, what do you want to happen?
So, in other words, a form of a contingency plan, or it would probably encompass more in terms of education for management, but you have as a component a buy-sell agreement, making sure that there's insurance in place,
Yes,
key employee insurance, things like that. Was that
yes,
right?
yes,
Okay.
but also, who has the passwords to this? Where is that kept? What are the accounts for that?
Right.
Some of
Right.
these things, someone hit by a bus and whatever, and nobody, guy's got everything in his head,
Yeah.
passwords or things like that. You'd be surprised that what owners keep in their head
Yeah.
that would be necessary for the business to continue. That's why they call it continuity, right? You want the business to continue even if the owner's not there right now, at least till something else can be happen, either the business for sale or transferred or whatever it happens. But ultimately, let's figure that out in advance rather than
Right.
deal with that. And in 3 hours, I can sit down with a client, and we've got a template, and just every kind of a question that people are going to want to know, your spouse, your key managers or whatever are going to want to know if something happened to you.
Right.
And that's done and kind of put away as a bit of an insurance if something like that happens.
That was really good context, and I appreciate you giving, clarifying that for me. And I'm getting a sense of, I think at a later stage, what I'd like to do is get a little bit more detail on where you fit, the specific deliverables. But the sense that I'm getting is you're very bird's eye view, understanding the whole lay of the land, where the planes are flying, and making sure that they all land appropriately, right? The air traffic controller,
Yes,
generally
and I
speaking.
have a tool. We have a tool called Epic. It's a piece of software that BEI designed that was kind of proprietary for this kind of work. And,
Right.
and what it does is it's pre-populated with all these different recommendations, some 84 different recommendations, depending on the circumstances of the owner
Hmm.
and the owner's goals. And so what happens then is that once you've kind of established the goals and you start to look at what the recommendations would be to achieve those goals, those go into a discussion with the advisors, and the appropriate advisors, weigh in on their thoughts in it. And out of those come recommendations that go to the client and say, okay, here's our thinking on the things we need to do. And the owner agrees, they change, they add some things, whatever, that becomes a plan. So deliverable is a fully documented exit plan. And from that plan, everybody has engagements that they take on. And my role is to make sure that, given the time frame we have, that those engagements are proceeding accordingly, and that work is getting done by the people who've taken responsibility for it and who are accountable for it. And so
Right.
that's how it gets implemented. That's the implementation part of it.
Right.
In
I
a
appreciate
nutshell.
that. Sorry?
And yeah, in a 10-second,
In a nutshell, yeah. Thank you so much for that. The
okay.
last question.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh, sorry. Were you speaking to me?
Yes. I was just saying you're welcome. I think I might have some internet interference today. I don't know what I'm looking like on your end, but it looks like I'm half frozen on my end.
You are sort of chipping in and out. Yeah, but the audio is fine generally.
Okay. Yeah.
The last question I'm curious of is, so you were discussing a network. At what stage are you with developing the relationships with those people, and how strong are those relationships?
Yeah. So I've started a roundtable here in Vancouver, and I'm
Mhm.
building one nationally as well. I want to with another partner who's out of Winnipeg, and so we want to engage other. It doesn't have to be BEI people, but anybody who has an interest and a motivation to serve clients in this sector. We're building a platform for that to allow collaboration, resource sharing, content creation, referral, referral opportunities, and so on and so
Right.
forth. So
Okay.
yes, we're gonna, with the roundtable, we're gonna be doing panel discussions in the fall, bringing together myself, facilitating, perhaps, and with 2 or 3 other advisors, maybe a
Right.
wealth planner, maybe a tax accountant,
Right.
maybe maybe a evaluator, or even some kind of other one of the other positions at the table that would be valuable to have, a lawyer, for example, or whatever. So those are kind of some of the initiatives that we've got going.
Mhm. The final thing I just want to bring up is just 2 questions. It's prongs from one general question, but are you familiar with the term lowest man on the totem pole?
Yes.
What would you need to see from me to replace your bottom person on the totem pole?
Oh, you mean in terms of my network of wealth advisors, or what are you speaking of?
Okay, appreciate the so allow me to clarify. Yeah. So the concept is, if you were to identify all of your strategic partners, and you were to group them and rank them from your most valuable, most profitable, the one who feeds you the most referrals and to whom you feed the most referrals in return, to your least effective performer, you would have a ranking where there is one person on the bottom rung. And my
Mm.
question would be, what would you need to see out of someone like me in order for you to replace me, or replace that person, the lowest person on your totem pole, with me?
Well, I think it's in engagement opportunities to be introduced to owners, and to have that discovery call conversation with the business owner, and just introduce them to the idea of exit planning as a practice and as a process, and see whether that's something that number one they want to do, and number two, whether there's a good fit with me, and what I bring to the table.
Right. Okay. Just so that I know for context, what is your fee? What do you charge? What's the structure of that?
So the fee is a um, it's a deliverable fee. So to develop a business exit plan, full plan, comprehensive plan, has some relationship to the volume of the business. So I would say generally, I would think it's somewhere between a half and 1%, depending on of the business volume. So I'm thinking
Of
between,
yearly revenue, or sorry,
yes,
what do you mean?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, in that range. Having said that, one of the ways that business owners often get started is they work on a component basis. So let's do, for example, let's do a gap analysis. I could do a gap analysis with a business owner, and I would basically pull together the people, and we would figure out what is the gap between their goals, and we'd figure out, you know, where are they at now, and we'd figure out what the difference is, the variance is, and we'll figure out, you know, basically what do they have to do in the next number of years to close that gap. It's not necessarily just money. It could be other things. Do they have proper management in place? Do they have systemization? Do they have proper records? Have they got a diverse customer base? Have they got, you know, key employees that they've incentivized and tied to the business long term? Those are the kinds of factors that come out in that gap analysis. So it identifies what the priorities are, right, in terms of business growth and business value, and then they can decide from that point where they want to kind of start working towards the actual goals that they've stated they want to achieve. And so that's a gap analysis. And then, of course, I told you about the business continuity instructions, which I think every business should have, which is and often what I've found when I've done this, it's a 3-hour thing. You know, it costs about $1,500 to do that for a business. But
the gap analysis.
No, the business continuity instructions.
Okay.
What I find when you do the business continuity instructions is all these things pop up. Oh, gee, I don't have that. Or, oh no, we haven't got that done yet. Oh yeah, I guess we got to do that, right? Oh, I don't know where that is. Oh, I'm going to have to find it. So all these kind of things start to rise to the top. That gets them thinking, boy, I do need to think beyond, you know, just phoning my accountant and calling a broker. So yeah, we would call it either component planning or you know, comprehensive planning.
Right. All right, Joe. Well, thank you so much. I'll leave you to the rest of your weekend. I really appreciate this. Yeah, it was a pleasure getting in touch.
Thank you so much. Good to talk.
All right.